The sterile fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Children's Hospital cast long shadows down the polished corridors as 36-year-old David Matthews walked briskly toward the elevator. His light blue dress shirt was perfectly pressed, his dark tie straight, and his expression carried the focused determination of a man accustomed to solving problems with efficiency and precision. David owned 3 medical supply companies that served hospitals across the region. Today's visit to St. Mary's was purely business, finalizing a contract for new pediatric equipment that would help save young lives. Numbers, negotiations, and profit margins occupied his thoughts as his leather shoes clicked against the linoleum floor. He had built his empire through careful planning and emotional distance. At 36, David had never married, never had children, and preferred the predictable world of boardrooms to the messy complications of personal relationships. His late father had taught him that success came from focus, and David had learned that lesson. Well, as he rounded the corner near the main lobby, a small voice stopped him in his tracks. "Sir, are you my new daddy?" David looked down to see a little girl, no more than 6 years old, standing in the hallway. She wore a light blue hospital gown decorated with tiny red hearts, and her blonde hair was pulled back in 2 small ponytails that framed her pale face. In her arms, she clutched a well-worn teddy bear that looked like it had been her companion through many difficult days. The child's blue eyes held a mixture of hope and uncertainty that made David's chest tighten unexpectedly. Behind her, about 20 feet away, stood a young nurse in blue scrubs. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s with blonde hair and a concerned expression as she watched the interaction unfold. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," David said gently, kneeling down to the little girl's eye level. "I think you might have me confused with someone else." The little girl's face fell slightly, but she did not move away. Instead, she stepped closer, still hugging her teddy bear tightly. "Mommy said a nice man was coming to take me home," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the busy hospital corridor. "She said he would love me and take care of me forever." David felt something crack inside his chest. The child's words carried a weight that no 6-year-old should have to bear. He glanced toward the nurse, who had begun walking closer, clearly ready to intervene if needed. "What's your name, sweetheart?" David asked, softly. "Emma Rose," the little girl replied, shifting her teddy bear to one arm so she could extend a small hand toward him. "This is Mr. Buttons. He's been taking care of me, but he's getting tired." David shook her tiny hand with gentle reverence, noting how small and fragile it felt in his larger one. "It's very nice to meet you, Emma Rose. And Mr. Buttons, too." The nurse had reached them now, and David could see the name tag that read, Jennifer Walsh, RN. Her expression was apologetic as she placed a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, sir," Jennifer said quietly. "Emma, remember what we talked about. We need to wait for your social worker before we can meet any of your potential families." Emma looked up at Jennifer with those same hopeful blue eyes. "But Miss Jenny, he feels right. Can we not just check if he's the one Mommy sent?" David stood slowly, his business meeting suddenly feeling less important than it had moments before. Something about this little girl's unwavering hope in the face of what was clearly a difficult situation touched a part of him he had thought was sealed away years ago. "Miss Walsh," David said carefully, "might I ask what Emma's situation is?" Jennifer hesitated, clearly weighing protocol against the obvious connection she was witnessing. "Emma's mother passed away 2 weeks ago after a long illness. She's been staying here while we arrange her foster placement. Her mother had hoped for adoption, but the process is complicated." Emma tugged on David's sleeve, drawing his attention back to her upturned face. "My mommy was sick for a really long time," she explained with the matter-of-fact tone that children use for life's heaviest truths. "But before she went to heaven, she told me that God would send someone special to be my new daddy, someone who would read me stories and teach me important things and never ever leave me." David felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. This child's faith, her innocent trust in a promise her dying mother had made, stirred something in him that years of business success had never touched. "Emma," he said gently, "your mommy sounds like she was a very wise and loving woman." "She was." Emma nodded solemnly. "She taught me to always look for the good in people. She said, kindness is more important than money, and love is more important than anything else in the whole world." Those simple words spoken with such earnest conviction hit David like a physical blow. Here was a 6-year-old child who had lost everything yet still believed in love and goodness. Here was someone who could teach him more about what truly mattered than any business mentor ever had. "Miss Walsh," David said, his voice carrying a new determination. What would someone need to do if they wanted to inquire about adopting Emma? Jennifer less than greater than, eyes widened slightly. Sir, adoption is a very serious and lengthy process. There are home studies, background checks, financial evaluations, and court proceedings. It typically takes months or even years. I understand, David replied, never taking his eyes off Emma's hopeful face. But what would be the first step? Emma's face lit up like sunrise breaking through clouds. Does this mean you might really be my new daddy? David knelt down again, taking both of Emma's small hands in his. The teddy bear was squished between them, but Mr. Button seemed to approve of the arrangement. Emma rose, David said carefully. I cannot make you any promises right now. But I can promise you this. I will look into what it takes to give you the home your mommy wanted for you. A home where you will be loved and safe and never have to worry about being alone again. Emma threw her small arms around David's neck, teddy bear and all, hugging him with the fierce desperation of a child who had learned too young that people she loved could disappear. David found himself hugging her back just as tightly, feeling a protective instinct he had never experienced before. I knew you were the right one, Emma whispered into his ear. Mr. Buttons told me when you knelt down, he said, you have a good heart that just forgot how to love little girls. David's eyes filled with unexpected tears. From his position kneeling on the hospital floor, he could see Jennifer watching them with her own emotional expression. She seemed to understand that something profound was happening in this sterile hallway. Over the following weeks, David threw himself into the adoption process with the same determination he had once reserved for business deals. He attended parenting classes, submitted to home studies, and opened his life to scrutiny in ways that would have terrified his younger self. Emma remained at the hospital during the process, but David visited her every day after work. He read her stories, helped her with simple arithmetic, and listened to her endless chatter about everything from butterflies to her plans for decorating her future bedroom. Jennifer often joined them during these visits, and David found himself looking forward to her warm smile and gentle guidance almost as much as he anticipated seeing Emma. The young nurse had a way of making even the most difficult conversations feel manageable, and her obvious love for Emma reassured David that his instincts about the little girl were correct. 3 months later, on a sunny spring morning, David walked through those same hospital corridors with a very different purpose. Emma skipped beside him, no longer in a hospital gown, but wearing a bright yellow dress that she had picked out specifically for this day. Mr. Buttons was still firmly in her grasp, but now he looked refreshed and ready for new adventures. Daddy David, Emma said, using the name she had chosen for him. Do you think Mr. Buttons will like our house? I think Mr. Buttons will love our house, David replied, squeezing her small hand gently. Almost as much as I love having you as my daughter. Jennifer met them at the main entrance, official paperwork in hand, but tears of joy in her eyes. Ready to go home? She asked Emma. More than ready, Emma declared. Then she looked up at David with those same hopeful blue eyes that had changed his life months before. Thank you for being the daddy mommy promised to send. David picked up his daughter, teddy bear, and all and held her close. As they walked toward the parking lot together, he realized that sometimes the most important business deals have nothing to do with money or contracts. Sometimes they are about opening your heart to a small voice in a hospital hallway, asking if you might be the answer to a dying mother's prayer. The little girl who had asked if he was her new daddy had given him something worth more than all his companies combined. She had taught him that love multiplies when it is shared and that the greatest success in life is measured not in dollars but in the trust of a child who chooses to call you daddy.